Chosen one, anchor your mind to what I am about to say now. This restlessness in your chest, the one that has no logical explanation, do not dismiss it. The enemy is working hard this week for one single reason: he knows what God is directing you toward. Everything ends here. The confusion as to why nothing fits anymore. The disconnection. The dull sensation that something is being snatched from your hands. But listen closely to this. It is not luck that makes it end. It ends because of what you carried and how you carried it. Think back to that moment this week when you looked at your life, your relationships, your environment, your routine, and something inside you grew still. Neither sad nor angry, just calm, like a door closing softly. You thought there was something wrong with you. You didn't know it then, but that silence was discernment. That silence was God drawing a boundary around your future without asking your permission. You didn't get lost. You were uprooted. You didn't find this message by chance. It wasn't the algorithm that brought you here. God did. This is a divine appointment, scheduled before the earth was even created. You are not going through just any Tuesday. You are standing on the threshold. Stay until the very last word of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to give you the exact verdict that explains why your spirit has been disturbed. I am going to present you with a divine examination of this season so that you can see precisely what God is removing and why He cannot leave you where you are. And finally, I will give you the declaration that seals this realignment and silences the voice telling you that something is wrong with you. Do not leave this page. Your future is begging you to stay, because if you leave now, you will leave before the verdict and you will bring confusion back into a season that was meant to bring clarity. I know what the last 72 hours have represented. The atmosphere hasn't just been quiet, it has felt different. As if something changed and no one told you what it was. Perhaps this week you were in the middle of a conversation with a friend, a colleague, someone you've known for years, and you felt it, that distance, not because something happened, not because someone said something foolish, but just a slow and undeniable feeling that this person no longer fits the direction you are heading. Or perhaps you woke up at 3 a.m. this week with a heavy heart, not broken, not panicked, just heavy, staring at the ceiling, reviewing your life like an inventory, with the feeling that something is ending, but you cannot name what it is. You feel suspended, as if you were in the space between the life you built and the one you were truly called to live. And in this suspension, the enemy began to whisper a very specific lie. Listen to your thoughts right now. He is explaining to you that if everything seems to be changing, it's because you did something wrong. He replays the moment you distanced yourself from the relationship. That moment when you stopped behaving as you did before. That moment when you let the distance grow and did not fight to close it. The accuser tells you that the unease you feel is the consequence of your failure. He tells you that you have profaned something sacred, that you have turned away from what God placed in your life, and that you are now suffering the withdrawal of His divine favor. But I need you to hear what Scripture actually says about this moment. Isaiah 43 verse 19 says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing, now it springs forth, do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Listen to this promise. I am doing a new thing. I am not continuing the old thing. I am not repairing the old thing. I am doing something totally new. The people who disappear are not disappearing because you let them down. The doors that close are not closing because you disqualified yourself. The environments that no longer suit you are not too small because something is wrong with you. They are too small because God has prepared you for a mission for which those spaces were never designed. You are not in decline. You are in transition. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of punishment. It is the weight of acceleration. Is the pressure of a life moving faster than your mind has had time to process. You saw the decline and called it loss. You perceived this agitation and labeled it confusion. You looked at this withdrawal and called it failure. But let me reframe your reality right now. It is not a loss. This is selection. God is not taking anything from you. He is selecting what is qualified to accompany you into your next season. And most of the elements that made sense in your previous chapter are no longer valid for what follows. The restlessness you cannot explain is not a spiritual illness. It is spiritual vision. Your spirit already perceives the realignment that your mind has not yet accepted. You are not broken. You are rebuilding for something that does not yet exist. God does not reveal things by chance. If this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, the plan for the chosen one was written for this exact moment in your journey. 8 chapters that decrypt why your life unfolded this way and what God is activating next. Listen to the full version of the audiobook at your own pace and receive Activating Your Prophet's Mantle, a bonus guide for those God is raising up as prophetic voices in this generation. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it won't stay there forever. Now, let me show you what is actually happening beneath the surface of what you've felt. We are about to lift the veil and illuminate the invisible forces and divine orchestrations that have been working quietly in the depths of your soul. This is not a mere coincidence, nor random chaos. There is a sacred architecture in the journey of every soul chosen for a higher purpose, a deliberate plan established by the master builder of the cosmos. There is a recurring pattern in the life of every person God has chosen for something significant. And this happens almost unnoticed while it is occurring. It is like the complex gears of a celestial clock turning with precision in the dark. Their ultimate purpose will only be revealed when the great design is complete. Think of it as the unwritten symphony of spiritual life, where movements of discord and dissonance often precede the deepest harmonies. While you are in the thick of it, enveloped by the fog of uncertainty and the tumult of change, it feels more like demolition than construction. It feels like a disruption, not divine direction. You only understand it in hindsight. Once the confusion has cleared, once the transition is complete, once the person on the other side of the wilderness looks back and finally names what God was doing. It is then, and often only then, that the complex tapestry of divine grace and wisdom becomes visible, revealing threads of meaning where there previously seemed to be only knots and tangles. But you are not going to wait for the other side. You are going to see it now, right in the middle of it. For that is the profound difference between one who merely survives a transition, facing the storm with clenched teeth and a weary spirit, and one who cooperates with it, aligning their will with the divine current, recognizing the hand of God even when it feels like a heavy weight pressing down. To cooperate is to become a co-creator with the divine, actively participating in your own unfolding rather than passively enduring it. It is about finding the rhythm of heaven in the midst of earthly chaos. Here is what no one tells you about divine realignment. It doesn't feel like a promotion when it's happening. It feels like grief. It feels like the slow, silent unraveling of everything you have carefully built, piece by piece, with infinite patience. Imagine a majestic ship undergoing a meticulous refit in dry dock. From an outside perspective, it might seem dismantled, stripped of its past glory, its internal workings exposed. Yet, this painful dismantling is precisely what prepares it for a grander journey, toward deeper waters and more distant shores. Your carefully constructed life, like that ship, is being stripped down, not to be destroyed, but for a greater purpose. This unraveling is not a sign of failure, but proof that you have outgrown the limits of your previous season. And the most confusing part is that nothing catastrophic needs to happen for you to feel it. There isn't always a sudden earthquake or a visible storm. Often, it is a subtle shift, a slight hum beneath the surface of your existence. The ground begins to feel different under your feet, as if the earth itself had changed composition, becoming less solid, less familiar. The conversations that once filled you with energy, inspiration, and a sense of belonging begin to drain you, leaving you with a strange sense of emptiness, like echoes in a vast, deserted hall. The places that once felt like home, like a comforting blanket wrapping your soul, begin to feel like borrowed spaces, temporary lodgings where you no longer truly belong. You become a passerby in your own life, a visitor in places that once housed your deepest roots. And you walk around carrying this unnamed thing, this dull and persistent ache, a phantom spiritual pain for what was, wondering why you cannot simply be grateful for what you have while feeling so deeply in every fiber that what you have no longer meets your needs. This is not a lack of gratitude. It is a profound inner resonance with a divine calling. It is the spiritual equivalent of a seed outgrowing its pot, feeling the irresistible urge to break free and reach for a vaster sky. This tension does not come from ingratitude. This tension is felt. It is the whisper of your divine mission, the whisper of your true self struggling to emerge from the chrysalis of your old identity. It is the Holy Spirit working within you, creating a divine discontent intended to propel you toward the very purpose for which you were created. Imagine Moses standing before the burning bush. Here was a man who had actually fled his destiny, a prince of Egypt turned humble shepherd. He had spent 40 years in the wilderness building a life totally different from the one he was born for. 40 years is a lifetime, he had settled. He had built a version of himself that matched the landscape of the desert, a manageable, predictable, and safe role. He wasn't unhappy. He had found something that worked, a comfortable routine, a quiet existence far from the turmoil and expectations of Pharaoh's court. He had built a life that offered him a certain peace, a refuge from his past. And then, God interrupted what was working with something that burned without being consumed. A bush of flames, yet miraculously intact. A symbol of divine presence that defied the laws of nature. This was not a gentle invitation. It was a burning and irresistible call. And the first thing Moses said was no. It was, "Who am I?" This was not an act of defiance, but a profound identity crisis. The comfortable self he had built in Midian suddenly felt insufficient, shattered by the encounter with the sacred. His old self, the one who had murdered an Egyptian, no longer mattered. The shepherd self was too small. He was being called to reconnect with an identity he had long forgotten, an identity that felt overwhelming and impossible. For divine transition always begins with an identity rupture before concluding with identity clarity. It is the breaking of the old mold so the new divinely formed shape can emerge. What you are feeling right now, this silent unraveling of who you thought you were and where you thought you were going, the unease of an identity stretched beyond its previous limits, is not the destruction of your identity. It is the beginning of its true definition. A more authentic version, more powerful and more in tune with who God always intended you to be. It is about stripping away the layers accumulated by circumstances and human expectations, revealing the gold hidden beneath. But here is where the issue goes deeper, and it's the part most people aren't ready to receive because it challenges the very foundations of their perceived security. Many are willing to acknowledge external changes, shifting relationships or disappearing opportunities, but few are prepared for the interior excavation God is truly undertaking. What God is removing from your life right now is not primarily the relationships, environments, or opportunities that no longer fit. Those are superficial manifestations, the visible symptoms of a deeper work. They are merely leaves falling from a tree, while the real work happens at the root. What God is actually removing is the version of you that needed those things to feel secure, to feel valued, to feel whole. He isn't simply cleaning your environment, sweeping away the dust and debris of a past season. He is dismantling the scaffolding you built around a miniature version of yourself, that complex support system made of external validation, conditional belonging, and self-imposed limitations. And this scaffolding, if you're honest, became what you called your foundation. You mistook temporary supports for an eternal bedrock. You confused the structures that held you together for a season with those meant to sustain you in all seasons, believing that yesterday's temporary crutches were meant to become tomorrow's solid pillars. But God, in His relentless precision and His unwavering commitment to your highest calling, refuses to let you turn temporary scaffolding into a permanent mission. He knows that true strength comes from within, not from external attachments. He is preparing you for a monumental construction, a life built on His promises, not on the fragile structure of human expectations or fleeting circumstances. He is revealing the magnificent edifice of your true self, which can only stand when the temporary supports are removed. This is where the true confrontation begins, where reassuring illusions give way to disturbing truths. And I need you to stay with me because what follows is a revelation that breaks the cycle that has kept too many chosen people circling the same mountain for years. Here is the key that unlocks the door to your liberation, the truth that will set you free from the repetitive patterns that have held you captive. Without this understanding, you risk repeating the same lessons, living the same heartaches, and feeling the same frustrating sense of stagnation, perpetually on the edge of a breakthrough but never crossing the threshold. This perspective offers a roadmap out of the desert of repetition and into the promised land of progress. The reason you keep returning to what God is trying to abolish is not disobedience. It is because you haven't yet mourned the version of yourself that lived there, the one whose narrative was inextricably linked to that now fading reality. You are trying to move forward while grieving someone you never allowed yourself to mourn, the old version of you. The one who needed that relationship to feel valued, to fill a void in your soul, to affirm your worth. The one who needed that environment to feel visible, to experience a sense of belonging and purpose. The one who needed that role to feel important, to define their identity and anchor their sense of self. That version of you deserved to be honored, acknowledged, and let go with love before being truly abandoned. It's like saying goodbye to a dear friend. You wouldn't just leave without a word. And because no one told you that grief is a legitimate, vital, and sacred part of transition, a necessary rite of passage in the journey of transformation, you treated your grief as evidence that you were making a mistake, as if your sadness were a flaw or a weakness. You interpreted your sorrow as resistance, a sign you were fighting God's will, when it is actually reverence, a profound, natural, and deeply human reaction to the end of a major chapter. It is the way the soul integrates change, acknowledging what was and welcoming what is to come. You aren't failing the transition. At your core, you are human, and your humanity in this moment testifies to the depth of your soul and the importance of what you are letting go. Grant yourself the grace to feel, to process, and to heal. And this brings us to something most people completely ignore, a subtle but crucial distinction that can significantly shift your reaction to the winds of change. Discerning between these two forces is paramount to leading a spiritual journey marked by wisdom and peace. There is a difference between what God closes and what the enemy tries to steal. And you must learn to distinguish them because they can feel identical in the moment. Both involve a sense of loss and the absence of what was once there. This superficial similarity makes discernment difficult. However, their underlying spiritual signatures are profoundly different. When God ends something, there is a particular quality, a serene finality beneath the pain, a quiet certainty that even if it hurts, it pierces the heart of your comfort. It feels right. It carries the weight of divine sovereignty, an unshakable peace that transcends understanding even in the heart of pain. It is like a chapter reaching its natural, divinely ordained conclusion, a gentle page turned by an invisible hand. It is often accompanied by a sense of exhaustion, a silent resignation to the end of the struggle, and a deep intuition that this ending is for your ultimate good, like a surgeon's precise incision designed to heal. When the enemy tries to steal something, there is a frantic urgency, a panic that demands immediate action, a pressure that insists you do something right now to prevent the loss. It often feels like injustice, like a sudden theft, leaving a sense of being stripped and violated. It creates chaotic energy, a desperate need to cling, to recover, to reverse the perceived misfortune. There is a desperate energy, a breathtaking anxiety, a fear-fueled impulse to intervene and prevent what feels like an unjustified tragedy. If what you are experiencing right now possesses that calm and deep stillness, even beneath the confusion, even beneath the sadness, even beneath the pain of what could have been, it is God. It is not something slipping away due to incompetence or lack of effort. It is something being removed with gentleness and sovereignty because you must have your hands free for what is coming, freed from the weight of the past, open and ready to receive the new blessings, new missions, and new abundance He has prepared. This divine withdrawal is an act of love, making room for greater things. Stay with me because what I am going to share next is the part that changes how you act from now on, shifting you from a reactive posture to a proactive alignment with Heaven's plan. This revelation is essential to breaking free from old patterns and stepping fully into the future prepared for you. The enemy's most sophisticated strategy against someone in a divine transition is not a direct attack, though those come too. It is distraction through urgency, a subtle but powerful manipulation that exploits your human need for security and your fear of loss. He knows that if he can make you panic, make you feel that desperate and frantic need to cling, you will turn backward. You will try to restore what God is releasing, to gather the fragments of what heaven has already declared finished. You will invest precious energy, time, and emotional capital into preserving connections already established, like trying to restart a watch that has officially stopped. You will attempt to reopen doors that heaven has sealed, knocking relentlessly at portals no longer meant for your passage. You will spend precious spiritual currency trying to convince yourself and others that the decline you feel is just a temporary glitch, something that can and should be fixed rather than a conclusion orchestrated by God. And every precious moment you spend turning toward the past, clinging to the familiar ghosts of yesterday, is a moment where your future stands patiently at the threshold, waiting for you to turn around to see it, waiting for you to abandon the past so you can embrace the new. T is a great illusion designed to keep you orbiting the past, preventing you from fixing your gaze on the horizon of your destiny. This is the moment to name the agreement you made without knowing it, to bring those hidden pacts to light and declare their power broken. For too long, these unconscious pacts have dictated your steps, often leading you away from your true north. Every time you return to something God had already closed, ignoring the feeling of completion, you are subconsciously concluding that what He was removing was more precious, more essential, or more comforting than what He was preparing, despite His infinite wisdom and boundless love. Gemini Adit. Every time you apologized for your growth, for your expansion, for the uncomfortable evolution of your soul just to make someone else feel comfortable in their static state, you are entering into an agreement that your mission, your calling, and your divine purpose were less important than their fleeting comfort, their fear of change, or their need for you to stay small. Every time you silence that burning in your chest, the divine discontent, the prophetic whisper urging you forward just to maintain a peace that was never truly peace, but simply the absence of confrontation, you agreed that the sacred fire God placed within you was something to be managed, extinguished, or hidden, rather than something to be released and ignited to illuminate the path ahead. These agreements, though often unspoken, have bound you, limiting your potential and delaying your destiny. These agreements end today. Today you reclaim your spiritual sovereignty and break these impure ties, declaring a new covenant with the divine purpose that resides within you. And we now come to the layer that changes everything. The one that most people never reach because they leave before the verdict, before the full revelation has unfolded, which is precisely what the enemy was counting on. He thrives in the shadows of incomplete understanding, knowing that if you leave too early, you will miss the very truth that sets you free. Here is the divine contradiction that will completely transform your understanding of this season. It is a paradox that, once understood, turns confusion into clarity and anxiety into divine anticipation. What you specifically asked God to take away, the unease, the restlessness, the troubling feeling that something is deeply wrong, that you are drifting into uncharted waters, is actually the evidence that something is deeply, deeply right. This holy discontent is not a sign of your weakness. It is the imprint of God's active presence in your life. God does not make His chosen ones restless to punish them, torment them, or simply make their lives difficult. He stirs them to move, to dislodge them from their complacency, to propel them out of stagnant waters and into the vibrant currents of their destiny. The restlessness you prayed against, begging for it to be removed, is the very mechanism He uses to position you, to align you with a greater purpose, and to direct you toward the fulfillment of His promises. If you were comfortable, truly settled in your comfort zone, you would not move. You would remain tethered to the past, resisting the call of the future. If the previous season still felt complete, if it still offered that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction it once provided, you would not turn toward the new. You would cling to what you know. The sense of emptiness you felt, this feeling of spiritual stripping, is not abandonment. It is preparation. It is the divine creation of space, the hollowing out of what once was so that something infinitely greater can fill the void. He had to create the hunger, the deep longing for more, before He could introduce the feast, before He could present the abundant table He has prepared for your soul. Just as a potter hollows out the clay before shaping it, God empties you to transform you into a vessel worthy of His glory. But here is the part you didn't expect, the unexpected revelation hidden beneath every layer unveiled in this message. The fundamental truth is that it allows all these intuitions to be brought to light in a profound way. It is the cornerstone of your emancipation, the ultimate key to opening the next chapter of your life. The person whose permission you were waiting for, the one whose validation you quietly sought, whose approval you thought you needed before you could fully commit to what God is calling you toward, that person is you. Not the perfect, flawless, and fully healed version of yourself that you tell yourself you must become before being worthy of this mission. Not the perfectly aligned, impeccably prepared, and absolutely confident future self you imagine. No, it is you now in this very moment with all your perceived imperfections in the midst of the transition, in the grief, the confusion, the turmoil, and the reformation, in the raw and authentic state of your becoming. God is not waiting for you to finish becoming before He can start using you. He has been waiting for you to stop waiting for a version of yourself that was never the one He was calling for, an idealized image that served as a barrier, not a prerequisite. The call was always about this version, the broken version, still in the making, silently burning, the silently chosen version of you that appeared at this message on a random day that was never random at all, but meticulously orchestrated by divine design. You are the permission you were seeking. Your divine mission does not depend on your future perfection, but on your present willingness. You aren't getting ready. You have never been more ready than in this precise moment. Every challenge, every heartache, every victory, and every moment of confusion has been a crucible, forging you into the person you are today, perfectly prepared for the journey ahead. Place your hand on your chest and declare this with me. Let these words resonate deeply within you, sealing a new covenant with your true self and your divine destiny. I renounce all agreements I made with smallness, with shrinking myself to fit into restricted spaces, and with limiting my potential to appease the expectations of others. I release the grief I carried as guilt, understanding now that mourning is a sacred path and not a sign of failure or resistance. I free myself from the version of me that needed external permission to become who God was already calling me to be, embracing the truth that my validation comes from within, from the divine spark that eternally resides in my soul. I break all cycles that fed on my fear and deceptively labeled it as wisdom. Recognizing now that true wisdom lies in courageous obedience, not in paralyzing hesitation, I step out of the suspended space between the life I built, the familiar but constraining structure of my past, and the life I was made for, the vibrant and expansive reality of my true purpose. And I choose the life I am made for, not when I feel perfectly ready, for readiness is a state of being, not a destination, not when the path is entirely clear, for faith is the torch that lights the next step, not when the voices around me finally agree, for my calling is between me and my Creator. I choose it now. I declare that the restlessness within me is not a sign of failure, nor an indication of my lack, but the vibrant and undeniable sound of my future pulling me forward, inviting me to begin a new stage. I am not broken. I am not late. I am not disqualified. I am exactly who God said I was before the world told me otherwise, before the voices of doubt and fear tried to redefine my worth. And from this moment, I walk in this truth without shame for my path, without fear of the unknown road ahead, and fully awake to the season that has already begun, ready to embrace the fullness of my divine inheritance. If this message woke something up in you tonight, do not keep it to yourself. Do not let this profound shift remain a private revelation. Share it with someone who is at a turning point in their life and does not yet have the words to express what they are feeling, someone who needed to hear these words as much as you did. Leave a comment below and tell me what changed, what resonated with you, and what truth ignited within you. I read them all, and your shared experience creates a powerful collective current of transformation. And if you wish to go deeper into what God is doing in this period of your life, to truly understand the intricacies of your unique plan and the activation of your prophetic anointing, everything you need is in the first pinned comment below. I will see you in the next episode.